So, hello, how are you? How's your week been?
It has been busy but good, back from vacation and trying not to get back into the burnout cycle.
A real vacation or a work vacation?
Family vacation,
So, work
so
vacation?
and honestly, I did end up teaching and doing a couple interviews for my most recent book, so I guess I sprinkled in some work, so naughty me.
Yeah. So, we had such a cool guest today, Ashley Broadwater, and we never had somebody speaking about journalistic principles, and we never had a journalist on the podcast before, so I really enjoyed this conversation.
I know she was so sweet, and I think she really brought up a good point about like what is it like when you have a platform and a voice and you're speaking to the world and you may or may not agree with what you're writing about. She also gave super great inside tips for if you want to be a writer and you want to put yourself out there, which I know when I was coming up in that world, I always wanted to know more. So she gave some really good advice.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved hearing her perspectives as a highly sensitive person dealing in this field and freelance writing. So we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed talking to her. And without further ado, here is Ashley Broadwater. It's so great to have you on the Sensitivity Doctors podcast, Ashley. And it's such an interesting conversation we're going to have today. I don't think we've had a journalist on the podcast before. Have we?
Mm-mm. No, I
No.
don't think so.
So, this is going to be a really interesting part, especially because you are also a highly sensitive person. So, welcome to the club.
Thank you. Yes.
And we have so many questions for you as a highly sensitive person and being a freelance writer. And I have a background in human rights and in law, and I did a lot of writing and presentation on that as well. I'm also a highly sensitive person. So, I have dealt with some of the intricacies that can come up there and some of the challenges. So I'm really going to enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to be here.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? How did you end up being a freelance writer? We'd love to know all about you.
Yeah, so it's a cliche, but I've been a writer my whole life. I think I remember when I was little, I would write mystery stories with a detective named Cocktail Jones.
Oh,
So
cool.
love that memory. Yeah, so I've been writing since then. And then I got my bachelor's in journalism and media, specializing in public relations, and kind of just jumped right into freelancing after that. It had always kind of been a dream of mine. And so I've been it for about 4 years now.
Wow. Okay. And you report on a wide range of topics. You've reported from health and news to beauty to body treatments and all around. Like, what do you think you gravitate to more?
I think the biggest topics I like to cover are mental health and relationships. But mental
Mhm.
health can embody a lot, at least in my mind. There's also a touch of like body image and nutrition and fitness can even come into that as well, especially when I write about eating disorders, which is a population I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And I will say the reason that I know Ashley is because she writes about relationships and mental health. And my publicist had connected me with Ashley. So we've done some interviews. I've been in a couple of her articles. And I don't know how it happened. I somehow cyber stalked you and looked up. And I don't do this with all of the reporters I work with, but I think just
Yeah.
because we had worked together so many times.
Hmm.
And when I stumbled upon your page, I realized, oh my goodness, we're literally in the same town.
Oh,
Yeah, I
wow.
thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and my publicist from New York City connected us. So this is just like total
Hmm.
happenstance. So Ashley and I went out for, I will say, a very HSP lunch because we get there. I'm like fully okay with sharing this. We get there and there was a banker that I had been dealing with during my acquisition of my office who was not a very highly sensitive person, was very like just kind of business forward, kind of cold shouldered. And I walked into the coffee shop to find Ashley and I see him and without even thinking, I just hightail, turn around and walk out. And I text her and I say, "Hey, can you just come outside and meet up? Because I do not want to interact with that banker in there." No offense to anyone listening who's a banker. It was just more so I just didn't want to have like that surface. How are
Yeah.
you? How are you? It was such an HSP moment. So when Ashley handled that so compassionately and just so laid back, I was like, oh, she is our people. And that's how it turned into why don't you come on the podcast and talk about this really interesting field that you're in. So yeah, so a little backstory.
That is so incredibly interesting, and I think that it really shows that the HSP shines through, as always. But I also want to just verify, maybe for our listeners, you write about mental health and relationships, and I think many people misunderstand this a lot of times. Of course, depending on where you write to, but most publications, you don't just write about this, right? Everything you write is fact check. There have to be resources for everything.
Mhm.
So it really takes a minute to put those articles together and make sure about what you're saying and if it's correct. And I know in many of my written undertakings, doing that research was sometimes much of what triggered me. Okay, I was dealing with very dark
Mhm.
subject matter. I was dealing with the laws of war and women's rights, but still, I think there are elements to mental health and relationships that can be the same. Do you find that during this process, some things may trigger you, or you find it like a little bit difficult to navigate as highly sensitive?
Yeah, for sure. I know in some of my stories, I've started with an anecdote from, I guess, what I call real people, unquote, basically like not experts, where they share their experience with whatever I'm writing about. And I think it's a really powerful way to start out the story. So I really love doing that when I can. But at the same time, that is the emotional part of it. It's like hearing people's experiences with things that sometimes I've also gone through and having to kind of keep like a straightforward journalistic lens, but also bringing my compassion
Mm.
into it because that's an important part for me when I'm writing is to like remain a
Mm,
human as well as being a writer.
mm,
Yeah. And how do you separate yourself from that? Because I remember that was hard for me sometimes, depending on the
Hmm.
amount of research I was exposed to and how long was busy with it. Sometimes it was really hard for me to cut off and say, okay, I'm going home now. And I'm like in my normal home
Hmm.
environment because you keep thinking about it and you keep kind of contemplating about it. How do you separate that, what you do with when you go home and you need to relax your sensitive soul?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of taking breaks. A little TikTok break. Probably not the best app for me to be on, but I love it. And it's actually funny because I work from home most of the time. And so it's like all in the same space. But I think I'm pretty good, I guess, thankfully, at distancing myself and kind of centering where I am in the moment. And focusing on other things. I think it also helps me to remember just to like see work as work, just to kind of always view it in that lens. But I think also like getting past some of my past struggles and healing and that kind of thing has helped me have some distance to where I'm not like as upset when I'm writing about these topics.
Did you also find that there was this element of almost like this cathartic element that gave you a way to also deal with your own past traumas in writing about this, in researching about this, where it almost became this safe space for you to, in fact, acknowledge these things from your past and write about it and have a conversation
Mhm.
about it?
Yeah, for sure. I would say most of my articles are expert backed. So I have to quote therapists or psychiatrists or some
Mhm.
other kind of doctor. And like a lot of times what I'm asking them to share is like some kind of insight or a tip on handling a situation. And so getting to read that from them and then incorporate it into my story is really helpful. And is just a good reminder to me for my own well-being for sure.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I'm hearing what it's like for the reporters that I share my insights with because
Mhm.
when she was referencing the therapists, it kind of makes me think of a coping mechanism for just dealing with the pain of the world in general for highly sensitive people and really for any of us. If we get really, really wrapped up just in the story and the experience of someone, and, there's nothing we feel we can do to help the person,
Hmm.
it's really common to get stuck in like a compassion fatigue cycle.
Mm.
And so for some people, it can help to physically go do something to help people. For others, it's loving kindness meditation. And for others, like myself as a questioner, if we, do you guys know Gretchen Rubin's Four Tendencies?
Mm-mm.
I think I've heard of
Tell us
her.
more.
So she
Yeah.
is the one who wrote The Happiness Project, and she wrote some follow-up books. Your Life Could Be Better is one of them, and she, using research, has explored the four tendencies that happen to be questioner, rebel, upholder, and obliger. And most people tend to be, I believe, obligers. um, Less people tend to be rebels, and rebels are tricky. And I have my clients sometime do the quiz. If you go to Four Tendencies, Gretchen Rubin quiz, you
Hmm.
can do it yourself. It's fun and quick and easy.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
a
still going to.
questioner. You should. And I'm thinking for our highly sensitive listeners, if you can figure out what your tendency is,
Yeah.
and then possibly do something within your tendency with your compassion fatigue. So I'm a questioner. And so for me, what that means is I'm motivated to keep habits or make changes if I feel like an expert is informing me of something, and or if I feel like I have the facts. So
Mm.
for instance, the whole you can only take 6 items into a dressing room. I'm
Hmm.
like, tell me the research. Is there
Yeah.
research on why I can't bring 7? Like, why can't I bring
Yeah.
this matching cami to go underneath my shirt? And so for me, if I feel compassion fatigue, it can be very helpful to research. I know that might sound odd, but looking for solutions, looking for information behind something can
Hmm.
make me feel as if I'm mobilizing if I have
Hmm.
compassion fatigue. So I'd be so curious, Ashley, if after you can maybe do the tendency, let us know what it is and we could put it in our show notes. I'm curious if maybe you're a questioner, because once you get the information, you're saying it helps with that kind of overload of emotions.
Mm.
Yeah, I will say I do think what helps me when I am writing people's stories and to my articles is like getting to add the expert input afterwards, on what can help people handle that situation. Um, Something I also think about is like sometimes I know something to be true, but I just need to hear it from my therapist, like I just
Mm,
need to hear it from
Mm.
some kind of expert. And so I wonder if that kind of ties into the idea of being a questioner as well.
yeah. Oh, I
We
bet
were
you're
just
one.
talking about that yesterday, weren't we? I think in our
Talking about
episode,
what?
yes, the whole thing about hearing it again from a different source, like some of the things we know to be true in our
Mm,
intuition, but we need to
Right.
hear it from somebody
Hmm.
else or from a source that makes sense to us, that it
Right.
feels like it speaks to
yeah.
us. I'm curious to know, Ashley, that and I got this question so much when I was still in my
Hmm.
old legal life. And that's the question about if your morals ever kind of prevent you from like defending somebody or taking a case. And I'm sure this comes in freelance writing as well, because
Mhm.
there are many opinions, and I think one of your main things is that you need to be able to remain objective and to report on the facts as it is. So, have you ever had situations where you feel like your moral or ethical boundaries are kind of being questioned with something that you needed to write or research?
Yeah, this happens a lot, really. It can be a tricky line to walk. I know a big thing for me lately is, there's so much talk about weight loss drugs and different diets and
Hmm.
things like that. And I
Yeah.
operate from a health at every size standpoint, which is a whole thing I could get into. But basically, I don't like to write about that kind of weight loss. I rather would prefer talking about just like a healthy relationship with your body and with food. And so
Mhm.
sometimes I've had to tell editors, like, they'll give me an assignment on that topic, and I'm like, have to kind of like navigate saying, like, thank you for giving me this and thinking of me, but I don't feel comfortable writing about it. I'm
Mm.
happy to take another assignment if you have it open. Or just if I'm introducing myself to an editor, just like a disclaimer that I don't talk about that topic. And usually they're really understanding about it. Some of the publications I write for don't even cover it, so it works out well for me. That's a
Yeah.
big one for sure. Yeah.
That's a very highly sensitive trait as well. We have a very strong sense of justice, of like what's right and wrong and fair and not.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
struggle a lot to be on the other side of our morals and ethics. Like, we will not sleep at night. It will keep us awake. We will be obsessing
Hmm.
about it
Hmm.
all the time. So it really just goes to show how well you really understand your sensitive nature, that you're already in a space where you are writing for publications that fit into your morals and ethics, and that would probably not even ask
Hmm.
you to write something like this. That's quite significant. Many of us are still trying to find that side of ourselves.
Thank
I
you.
love, and I was going to say, I love too how you ahead of time set the boundary, because I do
Mm,
think
Hmm.
as highly sensitive people, sometimes in the moment, there's such a deep empathy for the other person that you don't want to disappoint or you don't want to turn them down.
Right.
Not you, but kind of in general. And
Hmm.
so setting the boundary ahead of time can be very helpful, which it sounds like right out of the gate, you let them know what you're about and what you're not. So let me ask you a challenging question. The largest publication you can imagine, like your dream publication, reaches out
Mm.
and offers you a huge story, and it happens to be on one of those topics that you don't morally feel match. How do you handle that?
It'd be so hard to say no. I get really excited about writing for a new publication and or just a big one even. And so, but I think when it comes down to it, I would have to say no. Um, I think it's all in how you handle it, right? I think I would definitely be very appreciative that they came to me and expressed that I'm definitely interested in working with them, but I feel like that's not my strength or my moral like comfort, I guess, to write about that topic. And I also, if I'm going to be getting some kind of like audience or platform from that big publication to whatever extent, I want it to be on something that I feel proud to share and that feels authentic to who I am. So I think from a personal standpoint, but also from a professional standpoint of I don't want people to think they can come to me about those articles and then I'm put in that position again where I'm having to decide if it's okay
Right.
with me to write about something that's not a fit.
I wonder if that's the
yeah.
difference between a highly sensitive journalist
Mm-hmm.
and a lower sensitive journalist, because I know many journalists who will write against their morals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I
Mhm.
can't imagine, honestly.
And I think those lower sensitive people also chase the thrill of it. They like that kind of thrill of doing something that's a little bit outside of the boundaries.
Mhm.
Whereas highly
Mhm.
sensitives tend to love staying inside of the boundaries.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be a harder question if it's something that I'm not like completely opposed to, but there's like a part of me
Mm,
that feels icky about it. And I think when that situation comes up, I'd say we'll take the assignment, but then I try to write my viewpoint into it and just kind of hope the editor works with it. And just kind of be transparent with him about like this is how I feel, and I would feel comfortable if we kept this in there with my name being on the article and things like that. But
mm,
usually it's not so much of a dramatic change that it's like not fitting what they had in mind.
You know,
yeah.
I had a situation similar to that when my gaslighting recovery book came out, where a pretty large publication had reached out to me and wanted me to answer some questions about the Johnny Depp case. And I remember thinking I wasn't even paying attention to it, honestly, because it felt so, I don't know, overexposing and dramatized. And there was so many aspects to it. And they asked me questions about mutual abuse, and it was
Yeah.
so tricky. And I asked myself, ethically, I don't even pay attention to these types of stories because I don't like how they make me feel. But I saw an opportunity in that moment to inform about mutual abuse and also to inform what mutual abuse is not. So I
Hmm.
think kind of like what you're saying, like if you are put into a position like that, is there a way to still connect with your ethics and your
Mhm.
morals in answering questions or in reporting? So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's not always black or
Very
white.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, Ashley, I'd be interested to know if we take it into a little bit of a lighter conversation. What is like the most fun you've had or your favorite piece that you've done? I remember like I'm a pretty prolific writer. I think I have like two bookcases full of journals that I've kept since I was 6 years old. But my writing is for me, I can be
Hmm.
whoever I want to be when I write. Nobody's correcting me. It's all of my emotions and my feelings, and I just love it. It's like my favorite thing to do in the world. So I would be
Mhm.
really interested to know, do you have like one story or one article that you feel like this is like my top? I loved doing this.
Well, it's kind of funny actually because I think the article that I feel best about is about kind of a dark topic. Of course, it like brings like service journalism in there of like how to help readers. But it was my first story for Huffington Post. So first of all, it was exciting just getting to be in that publication. But I ended up writing about how sexual assault survivors can handle the anxiety around pap smears. And
Mhm.
that's
Wow.
where I got to share a lot of people's stories and also input from OBGYNs. And I just had so many good quotes and
Mm.
I just felt really good about that story. And I think just like getting in a flow state of writing can just feel so good, especially when it's something that you're
Wow.
really passionate about.
I was curious, what is service journalism? I've not, I can guess what it is, but I've not heard
Yeah.
that term.
Yeah, that's kind of like when you're talking about a relevant issue, but you're also bringing in a way to help the reader. So, for example, like in my Huffington Post stories, like I might talk about a topic or a problem that's going on right now, and then I have experts say, like, here's how you handle it. And then we list
Mhm.
off different tips and resources. So it's more serviceable, I guess, and not just like strictly informative from a news standpoint, but is also helpful in like a compassionate way.
Like
Mm.
self-help articles almost.
Yeah.
Mhm.
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 Hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
So,
I love
Ashley,
writing those kinds of stories.
but you seem like you're somebody who loves writing it and that you're really good at writing them. You have to send me the link to that story about the pap smears. I really need to have some advice on that because I struggle with
Mm.
that a lot. So I just wanted to ask you as well, if we have listeners today that are considering the writing path and they don't really know how to get into it or what to do, what would you say is like
Mhm.
the first actionable thing they can do to open up this path for themselves?
I think first, just kind of considering what they want to write about is so important. Because I think when you make a career out of something like writing, you have to mix the personal and the professional a little bit. And
Mhm.
so the personal being like, what are you passionate about? What do you know a lot about? What can you write about? And then the professional, like which publications would want this story, or how can I tailor
Mm,
my angle so it feels authentic and right to me, but it's also something that can be profitable for websites and things like that. And so I would encourage people to first get an idea of what they want to write about, and then that can inform where they write or who they might want to send their ideas to or what that kind of article looks like online.
Mhm.
mm, okay.
Once they get the idea, because I love that, what
Hmm.
is, and I'm asking as a questioner, what's like that next step? And the reason I say that is
Yeah.
because earlier you had mentioned that publications will reach out to you. So how does it get to
Hmm.
that point where someone can go from prolifically journaling, as Dr. Jean had mentioned, to, I mean, I know there's blogs, I know there's like, if you were going to say, take these one or two extra steps to put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think next it's all about finding the publications that would cover similar topics with similar angles.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, like if you just kind of Google something that you're interested in learning about, and you see what publications are already writing about it, um, and then going from there, sometimes you can Google the name of that publication and then pitching guidelines. And
Mhm.
sometimes you can find like the editor's emails and what they're looking for from freelance writers, things like that. And then as far as getting assignments from editors after you've worked with them for a while and kind of established a niche with them, sometimes they reach out to you and they have an assignment, like a story they need written. And that's always a good feeling. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
Nice. Oh, actually, it was so nice to talk to you today. You are such a beautiful person. You just have such a nice energy about you. And I can't wait to read more of your articles. I'm definitely going to look up the one that you mentioned on the pap smears. And if our listeners want to know more about you, because I think I noticed on your website you offer courses or guidance or
I have like
something
different
like that.
resources and I'm happy to
Yeah.
talk to writers. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, where can they find you and where can they follow you to learn more about you?
Hmm. Yeah, so my website is ashleybroadwater.site because it was cheaper than .com. And so there I have my portfolio, so you can see different articles I've written about these topics, as well as resources I offer to help other writers kind of get into the field. And then I love posting on Instagram too. I'm a lot of times on my stories posting about mental health and things like that. And my handle is at Ashley with 2 Y's _ Broadwater. And then on Twitter is where I share articles and call out for experts and things like that. And my handle is at Ashley _writes_.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to link that all in the episode for you below. If you felt like you didn't get that written down, it will be in the episode with all the links that you need to be able to find Ashley. Thank you so much for joining the Sensitivity Doctors podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great time.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sensitivity Doctors. Please be sure to share our video clips on socials and ask your friends to rate and review this podcast.
Yes, sharing these videos makes it possible for your favorite podcast to move up on the ranks so that other people can find it, share it, and learn from it too. So if you can share today, we would really appreciate it.